people paid a price that we did not. Look around you. The freedoms, the opportunities, the privileges, everything that we enjoy was paid for by people who stood in the gap, faced the specter of the impossible, and sacrificed. People sacrificed, whether they did so willingly or whether they were thrust on the stage of life by virtue of circumstances beyond their control, whether they were called up or forced out. In whatever way it evolved, they found themselves standing at some pivotal point in history. They stood in whatever gap the tide of events had scoured out of the landscape of their world, and they sacrificed. In whatever way that they did it, and whatever the circumstances might have been that set the stage for it, they sacrificed. But we need to remember that sacrifice is perpetual. Sacrifice is not something held to history that we can look back on with some sort of idealized or romanticized mindset. It's not something that we don't have to do because someone else already did it. Sacrifice is never concluded. It never ends, ever. The tide of events is always scouring out some gap somewhere. Sacrifice is perpetual. It happens every day. Whether it happens in small, nearly indiscernible ways, or whether it happens in ways that cost us everything and everybody, sacrifice is perpetual. As such, we are all being called to do it. If it's not happening at this moment, it will happen sooner or later. We will all be called to step into harm's way, stand in some gap of some sort, and hold the line against darkness, or evil, or madness, or greed, or some enemy, whether that enemy be great or small. Sacrifice is perpetual. It is an ongoing and ever-perpetual reality of this existence of ours. And if we wish to live lives of freedom, of liberty, of all things good and right and just, if we wish these kinds of lives, we must be willing to sacrifice. We must be willing to do today what we've seen so many others do before us. We must be what so many others have been. We must stand in the gap that stands before us today, with our faces to whoever or whatever the enemy might be. We must stand in a gap that will demand a level of sacrifice that others have known, and therefore we must be willing to know. And we must do that, for sacrifice is perpetual. And now it is our turn. It is our turn, so that someday others will talk about the sacrifices that we made and the gaps that we stood in, to the degree that they will be emboldened to do the same. We must stand in the gap in a manner that inspires others to do the same. Sacrifice is perpetual. And now, today, it is our great calling, and it is our sacred